throughout this week. So I think the big one that I wanted to talk about and get the chat involved here is Don Lemon. So wanted to see April, what do you think, or why don't you explain? Well, first let me kind of take you guys back to Don Lemon, big CNN anchor, very famous with CNN, but in 2023 he was fired because they were talking about Nikki Haley. Do you remember this?
Yeah, they were talking about Nikki Haley, and he said something about her being out of her prime or something like that, and that was offensive to women.
That's almost a quote. Now, I think
Yeah.
if you said that on Fox News, you probably would have been just fine, but especially if
Yeah.
you were part of the five. But yeah,
Really dumb reason for him to get fired, but I support it.
yeah, it's one of those things. But Nikki Haley, he said Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. And then he kind of noticed what they said, and he said, sorry, when a woman is considered to be in her prime, is in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s. So a few days later, he was fired. He was canned. So now he's got a podcast, and he goes out on the streets and he asks questions.
He has a podcast?
And I think it's kind of like a podcast, yeah.
Where does he stream at? I don't see it.
He does a lot of like on the street type of stuff. Almost like, do you remember how Jesse Waters?
Yeah.
When Bill O'Reilly was on Fox News.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of that, and
Yeah.
so he's fallen off his throne a bit,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
he's doing that. But yeah, tell us what happened in Minneapolis. Do you remember?
A little bit, but there's probably no person on this planet I care less about than him. So I haven't super been following it. He just intrigues me absolutely in no way.
Yeah.
But something about he went into a church and was like heckling them.
And this
like,
is in St. Paul, Minnesota.
It was in Minnesota.
Yeah, this is in Minnesota. So
Okay.
this is
Shows how much I know about this.
This is where, it's kind of all fired up and heated up right now. So yeah, he goes into this church, and they specifically he is with the protesters before they go into this church. And
by protesters, you mean violent activists?
Violent activists and they, I don't know if they got violent, but they were definitely breaking the laws when they did this. But yeah, they went into I believe it's called City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, during a Sunday morning worship service. So it's not like they're going in and just the preacher's up there and or just there in the church and they're trying to maybe get an interview with them. No, they're going in during church service where there's families and kids.
To see him. Yeah, let him do that on a mosque service or whatever.
No, he would never.
No,
he would never do that. But according to him, he's Christian, and he feels like this is okay to do. But anyway, he goes in. And by the way, it's not just him. It's like, 20, 30 other protesters, and they're chanting. They got their megaphones, and they're yelling at the people in their seats.
Well, there was a high-level organizer in there, too, like amongst him, that organizes a lot of these protests or ICE stalking events is what I like to refer to them as more.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason why they target this specific church, because one of the pastors, his name's David Easterwood, also serves as a high-ranking official for ICE. So they specifically target this. They come in and they start chanting ICE out and justice for Renee Good. This is before Alex Preddy got shot. So they're chanting for Renee Good, referring to the local woman that was shot by an ICE officer when she tried to run him over. They interrupted the service, leads for a tense confrontation with everybody there, especially the pastor. And he walks up and he starts to argue with the pastor in this interview style that he's doing. He's live streaming the event for his show, and he claims that he was doing this as a journalist, not an activist. However, he's seen on camera arguing with this preacher or priest, which makes you think like, okay, he's an activist. He's not a journalist.
He's always been an activist. He's never been a journalist.
Yeah, and he gets confrontational with them. I think the priest kind of did one of these, and then Don Lemon says, "Don't touch me" or "Don't push me," I believe is what he says. So
you came into their church.
Yeah, disrupting their church, and he's saying, "I got to kind of help my flock out here. There's kids and crying, and there's families that don't know what to do, and they're trying to argue with them, and there's some loudmouths there. Of course, they're all loud, but there's a couple of specifically that are acting a fool and disrupting this congregation. So I guess the question is, and maybe for chat, it'd be interesting to find out what you guys think. Is it okay to peacefully protest in a church at all? So I think we'll do what most people do. Press 1 if you agree. Press 2 if you disagree that they should not be able to protest. So go in the chat and
to me,
and hit
going
that for
into
us.
a building is that's a line.
Yeah.
Or especially going into a church service.
Yeah, well, I think it's I believe it's called the FACE Act that protects churches from this. It's the same act, if I'm not, I know
that protects Planned Parenthood.
That protects abortion clinics or Planned Parenthood from protesters being able to get close or enter in and protest in front of a
patient, which is fair.
Right.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's important to realize this is something that I definitely consider illegal. Especially he's not just protesting outside of it, on a public sidewalk.
Yeah.
He's inside I think it's a Catholic. I'm not for sure if it's a Catholic church or what church it is, but he's inside the church doing this. So it's extremely rude.
And it's private property.
It's against
too.
the law.
It's not a public building.
It's private property. It's owned by a church. And they're coming in and disrupting it, and they're not allowed to do that.
That doesn't make sense. So when we go to general conference, because everybody knows that we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Every twice a year we have general conference where we listen to our clergy talk.
Yeah.
Gives talks. And there are people protesting outside the conference hall, which is fine, but never do they enter that conference building. I think that would be a hard line in the sand to draw. It's you come in that building, that's when you've crossed a line of I don't know, what do you want? What would that be? Hostile takeover? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just... Yeah, and I agree that even with the abortion clinics, if you want to protest abortion, that's fine. You can stand outside the clinic, preferably across the street. But once you go into that building and you start, harassing the patients, there's a fine line between harassment and protesting.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel entering that building, he crossed the line of harassment.
Yeah. Stand outside if you want to, off of their property. You can stand outside with your signs, your flags, your megaphones, whatever you need to. If you feel like you need to protest a church for what is going on in Minnesota, and they're only doing it because of the pasture. That's why they have targeted this church. And I think Eric's got a good point. Where is church security? Is there? We've talked about this amongst our own church.
Yeah.
More with guns and stuff, but should there be some type of security that most churches should be looking at? I think a lot of churches do have security, but apparently this one didn't have it, or they didn't have enough to be able to corral these people and get them out of there because they were just doing whatever they wanted to. It didn't seem like there was any security. It was the pastor that was trying to figure this out by himself, which is pretty much impossible with a bunch of loudmouths that come in and start screaming. Any other thoughts on that?
You talking to me or the chat?
Well, both, I guess, but specifically to you.
Yeah, no, I gave you my opinion about it. I think there's a fine line of protesting and flat out harassment.
Yeah. So, okay, so kind of not, a little bit related to this, but